disruptive.
America that I fought.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. It's been a fantastic day so far. So consider this the part 2 of Hunter Biden's conviction, because we covered it recently when the guilty verdict was read by MSNBC and the liberal media, saddened by the fact that Hunter Biden was caught in illegally obtaining firearms while under drug possession. And we mentioned in the article, because there was a very key element to that story that still is very haunting, and so much so that there's more to the story that isn't being told about this, is the fact that while they were trying to steer the conversation into the fact that, well, Hunter Biden is a private citizen and that Trump is truly guilty and we need to convict Trump, and the fact that Hunter Biden's willingly accepting his guilty plea, how his father's not going to pardon him, was kind of telling in how this conviction actually covered up more than it can handle. And this is where it really diggins the corruption of just how criminal the Biden family is and connective to the establishment and the intelligence agencies. It is just mind-boggling. Just getting through the surface of this, getting through the surface of not just the, firearms scandal, but also the fact that we're not even talking about the laptop anymore. The Hunter Biden laptop that people said was a fabrication, it was Russian disinformation, but we know that there was a laptop. They found it, and they know they have some dirt on different people. So, here to talk more about this extensively, Glenn Greenwald covered a bit of it on his program, System Update, and here's what he says about this.
The real issues are the corruption that Hunter Biden engaged in places like Ukraine and China. That was what the New York Post was trying to report in 2020 when the entire media united against them to disparage that reporting falsely as the byproduct of Russian disinformation, reporting that big tech then tried to censor. The real question surrounding Hunter Biden's criminality is what it was that he was doing in Ukraine, a country where his father, as vice president, was basically running. Remember, Biden has often boasted, Joe Biden did, about the orders he gave to the Ukrainian government to remove certain prosecutors that he disliked, the threats that he made to the Ukrainians to withhold $1 billion in aid unless they followed his command to remove a prosecutor. I mean, Joe Biden was running Ukraine as kind of an imperial overlord, not at even the highest level of generality, but micromanaging all sorts of things at the same time that Hunter Biden was being paid $50,000 a month by a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, despite no involvement or experience in that industry, no knowledge of it. And there's all kinds of evidence that Burisma tried and succeeded through Hunter Biden in gaining access to Joe Biden. And then on top of that, you have all sorts of very strange deals that Hunter Biden and President Biden's brother were pursuing together in China. And one of the memos that the New York Post found from the laptop that the media falsely said was a fabrication showed that Joe Biden had a potential profit participation in one of those deals. There's all kind of sketchiness and potential criminality on the part of not only Hunter Biden, but other members of his family, that in many ways this trial over these relatively trivial charges seem intended to conceal or to distract from.
So, in other words, this trial of a firearm was actually a cover to the bigger scandal that they were trying to get the public away from. And this bigger scandal is involving foreign affairs, abusing power, having ethics violations, consulting other nations to do backdoor deals while your father, Joe Biden, was vice president. So the whole story to this, and they don't tell you this in this investigation, they don't bring this in the mainstream media, but the whole purpose of Hunter Biden even having this trial is that back just recently, they had a bargaining deal. The Biden family and the prosecutors had a bargaining deal that if Hunter Biden allowed himself the guilty verdict on the misuse of obtaining a legal firearm, if he confessed and meant guilty and followed that verdict, then they would not prosecute all these other scandals that are far greater and far more dangerous than the guilty verdict that he just got. So this is a bargaining deal they did inside the Justice Department, inside the prosecution, to ignore the rest of the Biden family scandals. And that's why this is such a bigger deal than people realize. The trial itself was a fabrication to play the idea that they were going to prosecute Hunter Biden, that said, oh, look at us. We're actually, we're playing both sides of justice. It's not just Donald Trump. We're not just convicting him, even though the mainstream media still approaches that way, still says that Trump is the bigger criminal for being a porn star. It's all a ruse to cover up the fact that they don't mention any of the Ukraine business dealings, the fact that he got this money from Burisma and became a contractor for Ukraine. None of that ever got mentioned. They don't mention about the laptop. So the growing theory of this is the fact that they did this bargaining deal because what's in that laptop is connected not only to members of the Biden family, but campaign contributors, people within the Democratic Party, people that Hunter Biden is associated with. And that's why they kept it under wraps. That is why they had a cabal of media and big tech organizations to try to tamp this down as much as possible. When the story came out that Hunter Biden had this laptop, what was the big reaction? Oh, it's misinformation. It's Russia. It's a hoax. There's no laptop anywhere out there. That was all to tamper with the fact that they didn't want to be exposed being connected with Hunter Biden and what's secretly on this laptop. Because there is far deeper, darker walls in this trial that's not being caught up in prosecution. And as Glenn Greenwald said, the fact that they're trying to convict him of trivial mishandling, like trivial kind of criminal charges, that yes, he obtained an illegal firearm. Yes, he lied about, the fact that he wasn't actually sober, that he may have relapsed or whatever. It seems trivial to the real heinous acts that the Biden family has actually compromised with. The fact that they systematically jeopardized the security of the nation in these business dealings. And none of that ever gets addressed in criminal prosecution. And let's not forget the fact that even though personally, I don't think that, drug users or drug abusers should not be met with harsh punishments like excessive prison time. Like, I think that's not the result that we should be going towards. Let's not forget that Joe Biden was the architect on the war on drugs. And under Joe Biden's ruling, under his jurisdiction and the policies that he was addressing in 1994, his own son would be thrown into prison immediately. If we really followed the logic of Joe Biden. So, to put it in this way, Joe Biden was the architect of the 1994 crime bill that sent hundreds of thousands of Americans to prison for doing what his son is doing right here. The crime bill allocated $10 billion for federal prisons. $10 billion. They can't even fix bridges in major cities. They say they don't have the money to fix infrastructure in major cities. But they have $10 billion to make more prisons, which is exactly what the war on drugs was supposed to do. It was supposed to send more people to prison. They wanted crime to elevate. They wanted all this to happen so they could send more people to prison and then use them as cheap labor. Established crack cocaine laws targeting poor communities, introduced the 3-strike provision, and set mandatory minimum sentences, resulting in the mass incarceration that many Democrats now criticize. While I agree that Hunter's business crimes are more significant than his drug crimes, it's important to highlight that Hunter wasn't incarcerated for the same offenses that his father's legislation imprisoned countless Americans for. And also just to add to that, the intelligence community, the CIA, the FBI brought a lot of these drugs with the cartels, had communications with the cartels to bring them to poor communities to enact this law. So it was a scam. It was a charade. It was all improvised from the get-go from the higher-ups. And here's what Joe Biden said in 1994 and what Hunter Biden is doing currently, probably to this day. They say that he's sober, but this is what he was doing for many, many years.
If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, $1/4 of $1, we passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can, take everything you own. Everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they've become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail. Away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
And did Hunter Biden get taken off the street? Did he get the prosecution that his father legislated for? Or did they cover it up for so many years to the point that they made up this quick, nifty trial of illegal firearm possession to then warp the public mind to say that, well, we at least attempted to actually criminalize Joe Biden's son without actually investigating the more harsher criminal past that afflicts more people and puts us more in danger and is more unethical and unjust than the trial that was played out in public. So this is all the stuff that they did not ever prosecute because there was backdoor deals to the Department of Justice, to the prosecutors, to Joe Biden's family, saying that, hey, if your son gets the guilty verdict for this, we will never, ever prosecute for any past crimes, current crimes, or future crimes, anything to do with business deals, anything with crack cocaine, anything to do with drug handling, anything to do with abusing power and foreign relations and money laundering. None of that will ever get prosecuted. if you allow yourself to get the guilty verdict on this. And yet, all you see now in the mainstream media, even with the Hunter Biden's guilty verdict, they still want to remind you about Trump. They still want to remind you that, well, Hunter Biden is a private citizen. Trump, on the other hand, is running for president, and he has 34 felony counts. Because apparently he paid the porn star in installments, which is kind of sad. It's sad. Trump, the big businessman, the billionaire, entrepreneur, had to pay a porn star to shut up in installments. I'll give a check every other week. And that apparently gets a harsher jail sentence than a real inexcusable felon of America. Could this be more an expose to show you that this is a political prosecution, that the Department of Justice swaying the one way and ignoring the actual crimes being committed right under our noses? They all play for the same tune. They play for the same exact cults that rules over them. And the only reason to do any of this is because they don't want to be in the spotlight. They don't want people to know Hunter Biden and his laptop. There are certain documents and files that would expose more key members in the political hemisphere. And that would be devastating. So, Hunter Biden, found guilty of owning a legal firearm, is okay with the guilty verdict, and Joe Biden's not going to pardon him because he knows his son's not going to jail. And that's how you know the whole thing was a sham to cover up all this.